This is why when you see the videos, you're looking at, 5 men, 8 men. They're not flooding the zone. I mean, when I was in the Marine Corps, if I were assaulting a trench line like that, I'd be coming at you with, a reinforced platoon. I'd have a base of fire. I'd have, one unit fixing, trying to envelop here, and I'd have Marines bringing firepower in. In this warfare, all my Marines would die because they're too close together. The FPV drones are going to hit them, suppress them. Artillery is going to come down instantly available. It's all blended in. You have to have not just the drones, you have to have your fire support people. So the moment the Ukrainians fire artillery on you, you have counter battery fire going in to suppress that, because if you allow the Ukrainians to continue to fire, they're going to kill you all. Completely different war than what the West is doing. France doesn't have this skill set. France is teaching the old way. Now, you could do the old way if France had time, because their trainers come from the French Foreign Legion. They have a culture of violence, a culture of warrior spirit that is, from their opinion, second to none. I will tell you, Marines who have gone and trained with the French Foreign Legion are very impressed with the warrior spirit of the French Foreign Legion. But it takes a long time to impart that. The French trainers are not going to impart the French Foreign Legion warrior spirit on the Ukrainians. There's not enough time. And the skill set that they're trying to transfer to the Ukrainians is insufficient to the reality of the battlefield. So the French will have no impact whatsoever on the Ukrainians. In fact, they'll probably hurt the Ukrainians more than they'll help them, because they're teaching bad. It's like anything, if you've ever taken martial arts or boxing, there's the right way to do something and there's the wrong way. And the wrong way to do it usually sets you up for somebody taking you down, because you're not positioned right. You're not applying the right sequence of moves. But it's muscle memory. So if you're taught the wrong way and it becomes part of your muscle memory, you're screwed. Your muscle memory has to teach you how to do it the right way, so that when you're under stress, your body automatically responds the way it's supposed to respond. If you're being taught a skill set that requires repetition of action, you're teaching muscle memory to a skill set that's going to get you killed. So much of the NATO training that's going into the Ukrainians is going to get the Ukrainians killed. It's not helping them. It's a waste of time. Ukrainians would be better off forming their own training academies based upon the lessons learned on the battlefield, get their own trainers in and train the skill set necessary to the Ukrainian soldiers so they can survive and function effectively on the battlefield. To rely on NATO to do this job for you is a death sentence.
You talk about the French army. How about the German and the army of the United Kingdom? Do they have any sort of skills that it's outstanding, in your opinion, as you've mentioned about the French army?
Well, I mean, the British, have a lot of tradition. Tradition is very important. But again, it's not assumed. It's there. It's imbued in everything. British paratroopers are very hard troops. They're very strong. They're very solid soldiers. But it's their tradition. I will tell you that British paratroopers put on the Ukrainian battlefield will all die. I will tell you that American Marines put on the battlefield will suffer heavy casualties before we adapt. We're not ready for this. We aren't trained for this. We're not prepared for this. It doesn't matter how good you are. The first time you run into an extraordinarily lethal situation that you don't understand, because in order for me to survive on the battlefield, I have to have a counter for everything you hit me with. First of all, my job is actually to get out there and make you react to me, which means I have to have a fundamental understanding of what you're doing. I have to have sufficient tool sets so that I can take control of the decision-making cycle, so that I can act, make you react, know how you predict your reaction. So I'm responding to that. You respond, and I'm taking control of the situation through firepower maneuver until I am in a superior position and you either surrender, retreat, or die. That's what happens on a modern battlefield. I have to be totally familiar with my environment to make instant decisions. Marines are going to go into this fight not knowing what to expect. They're going to get hit with something and not understand the consequences of that, what that means, how it's setting them up. They're going to react in the wrong way, further exposing themselves to additional things coming in they don't understand. And so what's going to happen is a whole bunch of Marines are going to die. Now, hopefully there's smart people in the back sitting there looking at it going, oh, no, I see what's happening. Okay, pull back. Now let's do it this way. You're not going to get it right. You're going to get hit, lose more cash, but eventually you adapt. You know who's very good at that? The Russian army. The Russian army is the best in the world of adapting to the reality of the battlefield. They make a lot of mistakes, just like everybody. But when they make that mistake, they take their losses, they pull back, they immediately assess and retrain. They have an instant feedback cycle that gets their troops pulled out, retrained, sent back in, and they move on. The Russians are very good at that. The Germans are just a joke. There's no military spirit, elan in Germany. They got a couple good units, but they model themselves off of others. It's not their own traditions. It's they say, we are trained like Navy SEALs. We are trained like American Green Berets. Well, what about being trained like Germans? But the German army, for the most part, is a barracks army. It's an army that's become accustomed to peacetime living, where they view it as a 9-to-5 job. You go to work in the morning and you sort of do what you do. You don't want to get too sweaty because you got to look good in uniform. You got to go home and be at your kid's soccer game. And so let's physical fitness. No, I'd rather eat sausages and drink beer. And so the German army is a very soft army, a very out of shape army. I can guarantee you that I could take a German infantry battalion right now, put 100 pounds on their back, force march them 25 miles, and they wouldn't make it to the end as a cohesive unit. They lack that skill set. They lack the endurance. They lack the combat mentality. It's a peacetime military. It's also a military that, like much of NATO, has become addicted to technology. They like things that go whiz and buzz and wow, and it looks great and it works wonderful in the peacetime environment. The second it gets out in the cold, the mud, where there's no maintenance, the things break and it all bogs down. And the Germans don't have this logistical ability, the skill set to keep that functioning in a combat environment because they don't train in a combat environment. The Russians have been in, the Ukrainians and the Russians have been in war for 2 years. Their units have been in the field. They've mastered these things. Now, what Germany and everybody else should be doing is putting advisors right in the front there, not to teach the Ukrainians, but to learn from the Ukrainians. I would be sending guys in there, dress them up as Ukrainians, and say, your job is to live for 3 months. And I want you to take notes of everything you're seeing there, how they're doing this. Then I'm pulling you back here, and you're going to work with people to capture what you've done in writing so that we can start, adapting to all this. That's what the Germans should be doing. They should be having units in the front, not to pretend that we can teach the Ukrainians anything, but to learn from the Ukrainians. The Russians will never say anything bad about the combat capability of the Ukrainians. They will condemn the Nazis. They'll speak ill of the leadership. But I have yet to meet a Russian soldier, officer, or general who will tell you that the Ukrainians can't fight. What they'll tell you is Ukrainians are Russians, and they're the same people. We're fighting ourselves. The Ukrainians are very brave. They adapt. They're courageous. They're tenacious. The West should be learning from them. We should also be learning from the Russians. We should be doing everything we can instead of trying to come up with politicized talking points to put the Russians down. Sit there and say, wow, that was innovative. How did they do that? What's going on here? Instead of, I see so many, I'm going to really irritate a lot of people by saying this, but I don't care. America today our military culture has been taken over by special operations types because the Iraq War, the war on terror, Afghanistan was dominated by the special operations community. So we got a whole bunch of SEALs out there. We got a whole bunch of Delta Force guys. We got a whole bunch of Green Berets out there who spent their time in Nangarhar province dropping the mother of all bombs on ISIS caves. And they think that they're God gift to the world because they were big and bad and wonderful, and they had beards and they have tattoos and they have muscles and all this kind of stuff. They don't know anything about modern warfare. They know about low intensity conflict, but they know nothing about modern warfare. And these guys have a tendency to look at what's happening on the battlefield and say, we'd never do it that way. Well, no kidding. You never did it. You never did what's going on here. Well, I would never do that. You never did it. It's not part of your skill set. Your job was never to come up with a armored supported assault on a heavily entrenched defensive position. Your job was always to go out and kick down the doors of defenseless Iraqi villagers, gun down unarmed men, terrorize the women and children, snatch some people and leave, or to sit back in the hills and call in an airstrike on an Afghan wedding party and reclassify it as a Taliban gathering. That's what you did for a living. You never engaged in the kind of sustained combat. The heroes of Abbottabad, SEAL Team 6, Red Team, they went in and they got a 57-year-old diabetic. Hey, bravo, bravo, you idiots. They trained in an air-conditioned environment. They lifted weights. They ate food. They got a good night's sleep until the moment came when, after they got perfect intelligence from drones, electronic warfare, they got on helicopters and did something they already rehearsed a million times. They went in and they still screwed up. The helicopter pilot went in and didn't predict what would happen when the fence line wasn't the way they built it when the CIA put together the model, and they practiced on one type of fence. They came in, the lift wasn't the same. They dropped, they crashed. I thought you guys were the best in the world. No, they make mistakes like everybody else.